All right, it's time to talk about the post UFC 272 card. I don't really have much to say about the card. It's one of those cards that every fight had some tangible meaning, but not a lot. So I'm going to talk about Greg Hardy. And I think a lot of people are probably not going to be super happy because it seems like you either have to be morally outraged about Greg Hardy, which you've gotten tired of being, and it's irrelevant right now, and I'll say why, or you, for some reason, have to shill for Greg Hardy, and I'm absolutely not going to do that. It's not something I'm ever going to do because the merits of Greg Hardy as a fighter don't warrant it, and we'll get into that. Anyways, let's talk about the background here, the moral, the legal issues. Personally, I'm of the belief that Greg Hardy beat his girlfriend. I'm of the conclusion that the first trial was the more truthful one. And in the second one, he either threatened or paid her off to not testify. That's not a legal fact, though. That's just an opinion. And then there was the drugs and the firearm stuff. The thing is that moral outrage, that legal obstacle, is no more present now than it was when he debuted in Contender Series, when he defeated Austin Lane on Dana White's Contender Series, and then Tiberius Gordon on Dana White's Contender Series, and signed his developmental deal, which saw him go and beat Rasheen Jones, and then debut in the UFC against Alan Crowder. It has not been enough to get him cut, for whatever reason, because the UFC's stance on moral things are weird. This is a promotion that booked a fighter to have a fight during an active rape charge. This is a promotion that fired a fighter before he ever fought for them because pictures surfaced of him standing with neo-Nazis with no actual action or even association really stated. Just there were pictures. And that's not me defending the fighter in question. It's just where that line is not consistent. It's never going to be. We can't make it that way. Here is the reason why I think we should cut him. We being the UFC. He's lost 3 fights straight, which is normally grounds for it. Now, you could argue he fought good fighters, Tybura, Tuivasa, Spivak. These are all quality fighters. But he was finished by all of them. 1 fight going into the second round. And the thing is that he has not shown any real improvement. With most fighters who have, at this point, a no contest plus a record of 7-5. So that's 13 fights. Normally, a fighter that has 13 fights, spaced over the course of a little under 5 years, about 5.5 years, or 4.5 years, you can watch them and you can tell, even if they were on shuffle mode, for example, you could watch them and you could more or less place them. I recently did some scouting for a friend of mine who had a fight this past weekend, I should say. And I reviewed initially the fights just in the order I found them of his opponent. His opponent had 8 fights over the course of 6 years. And I could tell sort of where it was in his progression. The new skills had appeared, rounding off of old skills, fluidity, all those things. The development of a fighter being shown regardless of the wins or losses. With Greg Hardy, you can't do that. There are 2 fights I would say that are excluded from this. Yorga de Castro and Maurice Green. Both of these were fights where Greg Hardy seemed to have improved as a fighter. Now, granted, he won the de Castro fight mostly because de Castro was incredibly inactive. He won the Maurice Green fight for reasons similar to what he won previous fights for. He just physically outmatched Green. But there were improvements. And then you don't see him in the next 3 fights because he just gets overwhelmed. You don't see it in the Volkov fight, where Volkov more or less just toys with him. You don't see it in the Smolyakov or the Adams fights because he's just out there to maul someone. Even the Ben Sassoli fight, which went to decision, didn't really show a lot of technical advancement. So that's the thing, is he's not seemingly getting any better. And he's listed on Tapologies with American Top Team. Someone can correct me if that's not the case anymore. But he's at some point trained with American Top Team, which is, if not the best gym in North America, then top 5 Mount Rushmore gym, etc. So there's no excuse of quality coaching. And some have said 4.5 years. They say 4 years, but it's more like 4.5. 4.5 years is not enough time to decide on a fighter. They're right in the sense that after 4.5 years, the fighter should still be learning, should still be getting better, and should not be in there to, quote, Cell from Dragon Ball Z, "This is not even my final form." And I have no doubt that Greg Hardy will learn some additional things, and we have not seen the best he can bring. But as long as he's placed on main cards in the UFC, be they fight night or pay-per-view, he is going to have to fight someone who is top 15-ish. And we're not going to see any of those improvements because he's going to get overwhelmed. He's going to get beaten. And you cannot improve simply in the gym. You have to, at some point, apply it to the cage in a full competition setting. He needs to go to a regional promotion to do that. So if you're a Greg Hardy fan and you believe that this NFL athlete can become something very good, then he has to go and get seasoning, development, whatever. Not in the UFC. Because he's progressed slower than Matt Mitrione or Brendan Schaub or Sean Jordan. And these were the 3 fighters kind of compared to him because they're all similar football backgrounds to a lesser degree. Mitrione in the NFL, Schaub and Jordan at a relatively high level in college while being heavyweights. He has progressed slower than they have. He has not shown the skills there. He's not showing that he's developing. And he has 2, I think, unfixable problems. One, he's asthmatic. There's always going to be some level of cardio issue there. It's probably part of why he gassed himself out so badly whenever he has to go long. And he's learned some better form, and it's looked a little better, but again, that was just really the DeCastro and the Green fight. And 2, I don't think he has the mental toughness to be a top-notch fighter, to persevere, to show the toughness, to learn and progress. And the reason I say that is because every time something has started going wrong, it's not just that he's out-techniqued. There's no shame in that. It happens. But he looks bewildered. He looks lost. He looks like, oh my God, someone is not intimidated by my physicality. He doesn't have that tenacity. I think some of that is that in football, you're talking about a less than 1 minute long play where you largely, a lot of the time, the defensive lineman either wins or loses very, very quickly in the exchange with the offensive lineman. He's either pressuring the quarterback or he's beating him to the runner or he's been blocked. Now, obviously, plays develop, they go on, you keep working, you eventually can get to the quarterback even after being initially defeated. But a lot of the time, it's decided very, very quickly. And that mindset, I think, is just in Greg Hardy. It's there. And when something goes wrong, it goes very downhill. The mentality, I don't want to say quits, because I think if that was the case, number one, he would stop fighting. But his mind is ready to accept defeat and then blame someone else, as we've seen when he gets knocked out and wants to blame the referee for stopping the fight. I don't see him fixing either of those things. He's got the right coaching, and it hasn't been fixed. And he's a guy who has been given a number of second chances, both in the NFL and now with the UFC, to fix his ways. And I don't think he has it in him personally as a strength of character thing to fix that. He's become sort of like what I said about Sam Alvey. Why are we watching him fight? We're not watching him improve. We're not watching him ask interesting questions of his opponent, because the only question Greg Hardy really asks you is, are you intimidated by my physicality? If the answer is no, there's a good chance you're going to get to use your game on him. This is heavyweight. These guys are used to fighting physical freaks and so on. If you can't actually apply that athleticism in a meaningful way, you're going to get beat. And I think it's time to pull the plug on the great Greg Hardy experiment, or at the very least move into phase 2. He goes to LFA, Titan, whatever, probably Titan. Or he goes overseas and he gets some seasoning. And we see if he can do it. We can see if he actually shows improvement from a fight-to-fight level, because we won't get it in the UFC. This has become pointless. He's tying up a main card spot that should be going to someone else. It is ridiculous that at UFC 272, we got Sergey Spivak versus Greg Hardy. A fight which is I don't want to say that he's not ranked. He is ranked. Let me have a look. UFC rankings. Heavyweight is incredibly thin, so it doesn't really surprise me whenever anyone's ranked. Honestly. Heavyweight. Yeah, I don't see Spivak in here. He might get in here off of this win. Probably should be in there over Sergey Pavlovich. Probably, if I'm being honest. But he's unranked heavyweight versus unranked heavyweight on the main card. Fight that didn't really increase Spivak's stock, honestly. He's probably stronger than I thought he was, but that's really about it. Versus a number 1 contenders fight at strawweight between Marina Rodriguez and Zhang Yan. That is an important fight. That's a title contender. That's a chance to build hype for a strawweight title fight, a division that lacks hype because the UFC mismanages it constantly and puts it on the undercard. Sort of like they did with Demetrius Johnson at flyweight back in the day. Still doing with flyweight, frankly. Or even, looking at this fight card, I feel like this was the least interesting fight. I would have put Jacoby versus Alexejczyk on the main card over this. I would have put Nurmagomedov versus Kelleher over this. I would have put Moroz versus Agapova over this. I would have put Jalen Turner versus Jamie Malarkey over this. And we're tying up stupid stuff because I think it says in his contract with ESPN that he gets main card spots. Let's get rid of it. And someone will bring up, he brings eyeballs to the product. I don't think he does. I'm open to seeing proof that he does. But you couldn't use like the buy rates of the pay-per-views that he's on, because did anyone really buy this card to see him fight Sergey Spivak? Did anyone buy Dustin Poirier versus Conor McGregor 3 to see him fight Tai Tuivasa? Don't get me wrong, that was at least a cool fight. But the buys were for Conor versus Poirier. There wasn't anything else. It's kind of like the same thing with Sean O'Malley fighting Chris Matinho on that card. It's like, doesn't matter. Either you turned in for Conor or you didn't tune in. And his other pay-per-view one would have been the Ferguson versus Gaethje card, where he fought Jorgen Castro. And if you watched that fight card, you tuned in for one of the title fights, Gaethje versus Ferguson, or Cruz versus Cejudo. Or you turned in for Francis Ngannou versus Jairzinho Rozenstruik. Because if you're a big fan of heavyweight fights, that was the fight. So is there anything really going on here in terms of numbers? I don't know. Maybe the UFC has it under their opinion that it did, but I mean, he was on the Wonder Boy versus Jeff Neal card, which if I recall correctly did not do great numbers. I don't believe he was on the Anderson Silva versus Uriah Hall card, which, I mean, come on, Anderson Silva, people. Also, Kevin Holland was on that card, and I mean, Kevin Holland was really, really hot. So I think if they did good numbers there, then it was something else. I don't know. Maybe they have numbers for it, but I don't think so. I think, like, if you put Greg Hardy in a main event and it drew big viewership numbers and there was nothing else on the card, sure, I'd be willing to say that he draws numbers. But you generally are putting him on cards with interesting main events for the most part, except for the Jeff Neal Wonderboy fight card, which I don't recall doing well. And you have nothing really to show for it. Did he main event the one with Volkov? Remember, was that a main event? No, it was Zabit versus Cavalcante was the main event. Yeah. So even that had a pretty hyped up main event to deal with. So I think it's ridiculous to keep him around. Cut ways with him. And if you're really obsessed with it, let him take 2 years. Make him only 35 years old. Keep in mind, this is heavyweight. He has until his early 40s probably to put things together. Have him take 2 years. Go out there. Get 6 to 8 fights. See what happens. See if he improves. See if it gets better. So, I mean, probably not going to be terribly popular because I'm neither pro Hardy nor, like, scathingly against him. Don't get me wrong. In my mind, I am very disgusted by Greg Hardy, but this is the UFC. We've watched the East brothers fight in it. We've watched Razak Al Hassan under rape charges fighting it. Conor McGregor's various antics. Morality has no place in these roster decisions. So, anyways, see you on the next fight card, which is going to be, what is it? It's a fight night. UFC Fight Night Santos versus Ankalaev. I'll probably do that video maybe tomorrow or Wednesday. Today's Monday. Either tomorrow or Wednesday. There's a couple of fights I want to think about and dwell on because I don't have a really solid read. I don't really know, for example, Javid Bazarat all that well. I don't have like a super big feeling about Trevin Jones. I want to watch some footage there. And I would like to watch some footage of Azamat Mirzakhanov because he's fighting Tefon Inchukwe. And that's another fight that I don't have a strong feeling about. And then I think I also want to watch footage on Miranda Maverick and Sabina Maza. I have pretty good reads on both of those as fighters. But the matchup hasn't crystallized in my brain one way or the other. So, there you go. Anyways, that will be all for today.